Good evening. Welcome to Wright Talk with Mike Lee. It's good to be back. Had a couple of weeks, had to address some personal matters, and so I wasn't able to have my show, and I'm back and glad to have my show today, and I'm really even more glad because I have a good friend of mine, someone I consider a good friend of mine, Kennard Wright. And I want to discuss with Kennard several topics of political interest to me, and on which I'm sure he has an opinion, because he has an opinion about just about everything.
That is correct.
And he's actually one of the smartest people that I've met in the last 10 years, probably, particularly from a generation behind me, so to speak. But,
okay.
you know, some of other people that I met in Kennard's in the 40, 50 age range, they refer to me as Uncle Mike. I don't know why.
Better than Uncle Tom.
That's what they do. But I'm glad you decided to join me on the show today.
Thank you.
I think I texted you or something last week or something like that.
I texted you.
You texted me?
Yes, I texted you because I don't have dance practice this evening, so I thought I should come on the show.
Speaking of dancing, I went to join you today. I didn't get to see you dance yet. I went out to Round Rock to try to see you, but it was raining that day or something.
We performed at 5, and actually this week I danced with Puerto Rican folklore dance, and we danced in Harker Heights at a festival this weekend, and next month at a festival in San Antonio. But yeah, we danced this weekend.
And I can't go any further in this show without giving a shout out to Richard Franklin, who's I think he's a friend of mine, but he's the one who actually introduced us. He didn't introduce us; he connected us.
Yep, Richard, I've known him for at least 10 or 15 years now. We were in the Black Austin Democrats. When he resigned, I was actually set to become president.
Black Austin
and then I resigned because I just could no longer stand. I was like, these aren't representing like where I'm coming from. But the interesting thing is, how can I say it quickly? Is if you want to get ahead, you often will play the game. But sometimes you need to step back and stand up for what you believe in or what is right. Stand up for your faith, principle, all of the above. Mm-hmm.
I know, I honestly speaking, and I don't know if I told you this before, Kennard, I started out in politics working on the Democratic side.
You told me. Was it
I
Leland?
was actually a Democratic precinct chair down in Leland, Texas. Mm-hmm. And I worked in the district attorney's office in Jefferson County, which was totally Democrat at that time.
Mm. Yeah, that sounds fun.
It was fun. It was actually fun. It's a lot of fun because I did a lot of work. I think I did just about all the work connected with the construction of the new airport. I did all the work with regards to construction of the new courthouse and the transfer of the jail facility from the old jail to the new jail and all that stuff. It was a lot of fun because I was about 26 years old then, and doing things that I was the first black attorney in the DA's office to work in the civil division because they only had one lawyer there in the civil division before I worked there. And so I was the third black attorney to work in that office. So it was a lot of fun. And I've always found situations like that challenging and fun because it was the question of how am I deal with this? Can I survive this? Or what can I learn from it? Because my thing has always been to try to learn. That's why I like talking to you, because I get stuff from you that I don't get from anybody else.
I want to, as the older I get, I want to be known less and less as being intelligent and more as being principled or godly, because there's going to be somebody more intelligent than you, more than likely, somewhere.
Always.
But thank you. But yeah, it's okay.
But Kennard, when you text me, I said, can you come on the show, man? You say, yeah, I don't have dance practice or something. I say, well, you say, what are we going to talk about? One of the things that I think about often, and it harkens back to my days when I worked at Judicial Watch in D.C. You heard Judicial Watch?
Yeah, did you work for them?
Yes, conservative Republican law firm.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of them.
And we spent our days filing FOIA freedom of information actions against the Clinton administration and trying to give the Clinton administration.
Oh wow, you must have been real busy.
Oh, it was quite interesting. I see a lot of the names that I saw on pleadings on cases that I worked on there. I see them on Fox News, CNN, and most of the lawyers there. Most of the names are familiar to me. It was good work. It was a lot of fun too. That was a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
But the DC experience is like no other. It's like no other. I also had the experience of working with firms out of New York that represent. Ironically, when as Curtis Millay law firm, they represented Mark Rich, who was pardoned by Clinton.
Oh yeah, I remember that. The Whitewater deal.
Yeah.
The richest.
But okay, I won't say anything about that because I don't know whether everybody's living or not.
So we should always be careful anyway.
Oh, I am. But the main thing I want to discuss with you and get your reaction to was, when I was at Judicial Watch, we had these ideas that kind of floated around the office of that a culture war was going on. At that point, it was denied. And what I've seen develop over the years, and particularly with the Kavanaugh nomination, is the culture war is right up front and right in your face. Antifa is for real.
Mm.
And the protests around the Kavanaugh nomination proceeding was right on TV for everyone to see.
Mm.
And to me, I thought that, it was very, from a decorum standpoint, very inappropriate and just rowdy and just out of order.
Mm.
And when I looked at, one of the things we talked about before the show started was that the president has kept many of quite a few of his promises that he made, particularly with regard to court nominations.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I read an article a couple days ago about there was the Trump administration actually pulled a judicial coup in terms of I think they had like 14 appeals court appointments, 2 Supreme Court appointments, and there were 2 district court appointments where he renominated some people who had been nominated by Obama. But I think the judiciary the judicial landscape has changed tremendously.
Yes.
Because it was actually the liberal, or as I call it, the anti-American playground.
Well, he did nominate at least one of them that was kind of interesting, but yeah, he's done a lot.
But they're waiting on him to nominate Merrick Garland. That's what they're waiting on.
I mean, I could understand the point around Merrick Garland. There should have been an up or down vote, but the fact is that 2 wrongs don't make a right. Just because look, you vote up or down, that's a yes or no. If you got the votes, you win. If you ain't got the votes, you lose. And even though marriage could have been handled differently, although I understand the significance of the seat in the context of a culture war or politics or whatever, well, they did it on marriage. Well, okay, just because it was done to you, you should do it to someone else. At the end of the day, if you wanted to be able to appoint somebody to the Supreme Court currently, you should have won the election, and you didn't win the election. So therefore, you don't have the ability to appoint. And even if Congress had you won control of the Senate, you could shoot them up or moderate the nominees. So you might want to learn how to get a message that resonates with the people. Being a Democrat, if you are a Democrat, then sit there and cry over spoiled milk. This is not a commercial from 1956. We don't need to be crying over no milk. We need to move forward. If you lose, you lose.
To me, from a historical perspective, actually, the Democrats started when they did the number on board, and ever since then, it's been a big hullabaloo about Supreme Court nominations, where previously was a matter of qualifications, not what girl he might have grinded too hard on at a high school party 30 years ago.
Well, look, it is relevant in a general sense if someone assaulted somebody.
Yeah.
If there is proof or you were convicted, then you could do something about one's moral qualifications in terms of one's character. But in lieu of having proof, what did I tell you before the show? What did they say? If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. If you can't prove it, you got to let it go. You live in a society where there's supposed to be a presumption of innocence, not a presumption of I don't like him, so he must be guilty. This isn't preschool, right?
Well, he must be guilty because he was nominated by President Trump.
Well, I'll tell you, there's somebody in town, and if I said it, people would know, who works as an executive with a local company. And I saw the person. I said, and what happened to see the person? The TV was on somewhere, and I said, well, what do you think about this? It was a Kavanaugh hearings on. And the guy basically stopped, and he said, oh, well, I was appointed by that man who always talks about grabbing stuff. And, I can't believe, in a country that stands for principles and da-da-da. And I said, well, you do realize that number one, Hillary did attack every woman that Bill assaulted, so neither candidate was without flaws, right? You need to live in a place where people can speak up, but you need to live in a place, like I said, where you presume someone's innocent. And I said, well, look, People and how they view that nomination, how they view everything is based upon their perception of their political affiliation. That is what's real. Or their religion, whether they believe in, if they're Wiccan or they believe in their sexuality, whatever the heck they believe in. So the point is like this person was in a position of power that would be known in the circles in and around Austin, and automatically was talking about how bad Trump was. And when I said, oh, well, both candidates were flawed, this isn't a problem that Trump just made up, Oh, well, they didn't have nothing to say, but his first reaction when you got him in private was mean and ugly, and someone who's degreed and all this other jibber jabber and such. So there's this way people will talk, and they're talking the same way in which they say others should not talk, being mean and ugly and talking about different sexual stuff like.
Well,
where do you get off with your morality?
To me, that kind of touches on the hypocrisy around this tolerance thing. It seems to me that liberals are tolerant as long as you agree with them.
Yeah, you're liberal.
But as long as you don't, the second you don't agree with them, something is wrong with you.
Yes, it is some. I feel like somebody named Mussolini should be just walking by because it just seems so fascist. He was like, "Oh, where's Mussolini?" Because this is how they act. And if you don't if you don't believe, there used to be a time where we could disagree fundamentally and still try to work together. And this is frankly a Republican and a Democratic issue. At the same time, we see that, like you said, with the Supreme Court nominations, that's all the Democrats tend to use the sexuality thing. It doesn't matter if you can prove it. It's some straight Joseph Goebbels stuff where you just throw it and hope it sticks. But yeah, there is this preponderance of people just like you say anything. If I disagree with you, then somehow I'm mean or intolerant. No, I have different values. I have different principles. And in fact, at the end of the day, if you are truly liberal, then you understand that there are people that believe different than you. There are people that think different than you. Just because I don't agree with your lifestyle doesn't mean I hate you. I love you as a person, but I can disagree with what you do with your life. You do. Yeah.
There's a difference between you and what you do. What you do.
You love them as a person as a child of God.
But you may not like what they do.
But if you say, hey, if I'm sitting there doing crack and you say, I love you, Kennard, but why are you? But I don't like the fact, you're intolerant. No, I just don't agree that you're doing crack.
Yeah.
Well, I love horses. Well, yeah, that's not natural, but, I love you, but you may need to seek some resolution with that. So there's this veneer, and you see it in the city of Austin, you see it in most major cities, Minneapolis, you see it in D.C. or whatever, where you have this willingness in many cities or many places for that matter, where it's one way, which is mostly liberal meaning we only believe that, we believe everyone should do what they want. We believe abortion on demand is really a great thing. We believe if you choose to love a caterpillar that you can rename yourself butterfly or whatever, but the point is that if you don't agree with that fundamentally or wholly, then somehow you are intolerant or you some ignorant Cro-Magnon man who has no ability to comprehend or articulate a thought. That's not fair. That is not right. That's not just. We should not live in a society where you can't respect that. If I say I'm a Christian or say I'm a Sikh, that I can't disagree with something that you do or believe, and I don't deserve respect because if I voted for Trump or if I voted for whomever or whatever, somehow you're ignorant. No, I'm not ignorant. I believe different to you. I have different values. I have a different compass in my life. So you can't just walk up and throw some juice in my face because I got America great again. Kanye isn't a fool because he went to the White House. Maybe he kind of drabbles a little bit in his speech. But somehow if you support something, if you're willing to articulate or think about what the president is saying or what anybody says is not liberal, I've been liberal. I tried that. It didn't work for me. That didn't free me. The liberalism doesn't free you any more than conservatism.
You know what's amazed me about this whole Kanye Trump business? I think I saw when I saw a picture, Jim Brown was sitting in the picture. Nobody said anything about Jim, cause they know Jim would tighten them up.
Well, what I told people, and I even had people at my job. Well, he's ignorant. Kanye's this and that. And finally, after about 5 minutes, I got up and walked over. And I said, well, if y'all think about it, and I did jump in the conversation. If you think about it, I said Kanye has more influence with the president of the United States of America than the whole of the congressional black caucus.
Who too scared to talk to him?
Well, don't like him, whatever. I was like, I didn't know we were playing bones where we got to worry about who we like, right? But my point was this. You could call him whatever you want, but if black people, this is what I told him, we don't think strategically anymore. I don't like him. And some lady was over there, when I said it, what? Yeah, that's the truth, is that Kanye and his wife have more influence than most black congressmen. And I'm not saying he's perfect, but you use whatever you can to achieve your objective and get what you need for your community.
But they won't even sit down and talk with him.
Well, that's because they're stupid. And power, Frederick Douglass, power, I forget, I don't know why, I used to always know the quote. Power concedes nothing without demand.
Without demand.
And they're not even willing to demand. All they want to go is like, I don't like you. Well, you know what? You ain't getting nothing out of 8 years of Obama, so you might as well at least talk to the dude. Because at the end of the day, if you talk to him and like Kanye did, one or two things going to happen. It's real simple. They don't understand this. This is how I work on the street. This is how I work on the playground. Either one, he's going to support what you have and try to fight for it. Or two, he's not. Now, in option one, you get something that may have some economic or social benefit for the community. Number two, if you don't like him, you'd have made him look stupid, and there you got what you really want.
See, ever since Trump was elected, Kennard, I've thought to myself, now he prides himself on being a deal maker. Well, darn it, why don't you go there and see the kind of deal you can make with him?
Exactly. Because I think what happens with people is you get so tied to your ideology, or black people are so tied to, I can't deal with a Republican, or I can't deal with this. And some of that's changing, by the way, as you know.
Really?
Yeah, I think some of them changing.
You know?
Like one of my relatives, I don't want to say it because then people know, one of my, I'm like,
Maintain the anonymity.
Exactly. Well, let's just say one of my closest relatives, my madrina, for anybody who speaks Spanish, my madrina, was sitting there talking about the border wall and how she supported some of his economic stuff. I've never talked to her one way or another. Well, I do talk about some things, but I never tried to tell her what to think. And so there's some portion that if they're not Republican or whatever, but they're thinking like, okay, we're not getting anything out of this policy over here. They're not to be mean against someone who wants to come here legally and work, right? But the point is like that there's some portion of the black population, I think I'd say about 5 to 10%, that is like, hey, you know what? I don't necessarily like Trump, but maybe we do need tighter immigration. Maybe we do need some different security measures. Maybe, oh, you know what? I know I might still be working 2 jobs, but I was able to get that second job a little bit easier now, or whatever. Or I did get a raise on my job when the tax cut came in, or whatever. But the point is, people are starting to wake up. Not that everybody needs to be conservative, because that's a lie. But just that people need to be open to say that, hey, what is working? And that they're not tied to an ideology.
What advances their interests?
What advances their interests individually and collectively? Because when my madrina was like, yeah, I support him. I was telling my brother to look at it. And I'm sitting there like, oh, okay. I never told her what to think, right? But she came to that conclusion on her own. And it's a lot of people, you talk about coming out in the 70s and 80s and all this. There's a lot of black people that's sitting, not a lot, that's maybe not more than 10% of the voting population, maybe 5, that are saying, you know what, I'm not going to stand over there with these dudes just because they're telling me they like me. You better keep that to yourself. So I think things are changing, but people are looking at things a little bit different. And I think they should, just because, what did you say? What is in your interest?
I think I heard Richard Franklin say this first. Is it either Richard Franklin or Robert Muhammad? They say in politics, there are no permanent friends or permanent enemies, just permanent interests.
That should be the case, but I think the reality is that should be the case, but I don't think it always is. Your interests are permanent, but you tend to base your working relationships based upon your history.
Yeah.
Based upon your perception of history. You know, like, I'm gonna vote Democrat. Well, what you get out of the 8 years of Obama? Name me. And I like to ask them. I look at them straight in the face. Tell me one thing.
Obamacare.
Okay, so that mostly affected black people. Well, he did have My Brother's Keeper. That was a minimal program that came out sometime the second year, the second term.
I like to ask them, how many executive orders did they sign for black people? I know how many signed for gay people.
Close your eyes. There you go. But the one thing I said, I'll give you one. I'll give you one because I know once I get one, they ain't gonna have another one. I say, well, you know what? There is the sentencing guidelines where he lifted some of the sentencing guidelines for crack and cocaine. There you go. That's one good one for you. That's only one.
That's one.
Then I say what we said again. And even I'm castigating them. I'm trying to do it to a point. Name one piece of legislation that the Congressional Black Caucus put forward that benefit black people. No. I'm not going to. No, I'm not even going to do that. And during the 8 years of Obama or the 2 years of Trump to better us outside of entitlements. Or you can include entitlements. But let's exclude entitlements just for sake of grins. You know, ha ha ha. Name me one thing. Because I know if they go look, they ain't gonna find nothing. Or I'll go you one better and bring this into the current thing so we can change the subject again. Somebody's like, oh well, Beto and Ted Cruz and Ted's full of stuff. I said, well, you know, and Beto's supporting the police and he said there's police brutality against black people. And I said, you know what? I said, I could tell you how Ted Cruz real quick could have turned this around on him. And Ted's a pretty smart guy. I ain't saying I love him or hate him, but you know, I said the first thing I said to my coworker is. I walked over after they badmouthed him. See, this is what you get when you work in somewhere that's liberal. All you hear all the time, oh my God, all you hear all the time is people badmouthing anybody that's not liberal. And if you walk over, when I walked over them talking about Kanye, you would have thought I was about to pee in that man's face the way they looked at me. And they sitting there talking 5-6 minutes. I walk over, talk 30 seconds. They looking at me like I'm a crackhead. Funk that. And that's a song. F-U-N-C-K. Funk that. Go check that song out. But what I told the coworkers about Beto, I said, well, you know what? About police brutality, I said, you know what? Beto didn't really do nothing. But I said, number one, you need to go back and look at what legislation did he put forth in his term while he's been in Congress that supported that. And I said, you know, number two, I said, you got to think about police administration. Police brutality can best be served. You can't change people's attitudes. You can change how they police. In the last, since 1980 or 70-something, it's more military. They're trained to shoot to kill. I said, you can't change how they think necessarily or how they feel people, but police are managed at the local level. So that means you need to get on the mayor and the city council when they're appointing police chiefs. You need to go down. You need to control it that way, right? Beto and Ted Cruz have peripheral responsibility or ability to affect the police department. Right? So while Beto's giving good little things and stand a bunch of Negroes, he can't do a damn thing really about it unless he a mayor of Austin or of Dallas. And the dude stopped and thought, he said, oh, that's a good point. Well, see, what did he do? And this guy's in college or whatever. Do you think a decent person, or he automatically assumed, oh, Beto's right and Ted's wrong? No. And by the way, when Ted responded to that Beto question, Ted said, Ted, I hope you're listening. You can hire me. I'll give you a good price. You could. I would. Hey. But Ted, when Beto responded, well, police and, you know, police were, you know, there's police brutality. And you know what? What I would have said, like, you know, sometimes there is brutality. Sometimes black people have been treated and are treated incorrectly and not commensurate with them being citizens. However, you know, you have to understand how we need to change the attitudes of police. Is at some level that's a local responsibility, number one, and also that we do believe that most policemen are good people. So on the one hand, you acknowledge that police brutality does sometimes happen, and we can be driving while black. However, you also understand that we live in a society where we're supposed to have a certain degree of law and order, and the police, by and large, most of them do a good job. So the whole point there is to say that, you know, don't think one way if you're a voter and assume, and if you're a politician, you can respect the police and acknowledge something that is historical and sometimes even systemic in regards to how we're treated. And I'm saying that from the standpoint of being more conservative than not.
Well, I think too often people buy into embracing a victim status permanently. I'm permanently a victim and I'm helpless. And to me, it seems as though liberals and Democrats think you're permanently a victim, you're victimized, you can't do for yourself, you need my help. You can't help yourself, which means you're incapable. Which to me is sort of an insult.
It's not sort of an insult, but at the end of the day, if I buy into that collectively or individually, it's a responsibility. There's a fine line between saying sometimes we can be treated wrong and incorrectly, and they can respond to us in ways that aren't normal, civil, just, or anything. And another thing saying, I always, I ain't, I won't, I can't. There's a difference between acknowledging something that may happen and taking on, like you said, the victim mentality. No, I'm not a victim because I know some of my history. So you can't roll up on me. And so I was taught to read and to enjoy reading and learning. Most of us just enjoy following whatever the hell they say on TV. Well, just like my coworkers. Oh, well, you know, they said Ted, they said this. Dude. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you how this really works. This is what I want to say. Because they don't understand. Well, you can take on that victim mentality, right? But that's a choice internally and as a collective. That's a choice. That's an individual choice. And if you buy into that, then you are at a disadvantage. You have actually forsaken your history in the last 100 years, in the last 200 years, and in the last 400 or 500 years. I'm going to get in trouble. I might do a Kanye and not quote say the right thing. Because Kanye said at one point to the victim idea, he said, well, I think you can never really, slavery is a choice. And metaphorically, he was correct. If you look at some of the slave revolts in the West Indies and even here, West Indies are more notable. They were from people who, even though they were enslaved, they never accepted slavery as a permanent condition. Slavery, even to death, was, I am not a slave. You may have me in chains. You may castrate me. You may make me have sex with my mother, but I will never, ever be a slave. And Kanye is a little zonky, so maybe he didn't say everything very well, but the point is that you choosing that mentality that you're referencing is a choice. So even let's put it in the context of a believer, if you're a Christian, that I can believe that I'm poor, I'm sad, I'm depressed, I'm unworthy, or I can choose, which is the victim mentality. But your identity through Christ, per the context of faith, shows that you are the victor, even if you didn't have Christ, because as a slave we were animists and all that, right? You choose. You don't have to disregard your history to choose that you are not inferior. And you don't have, just because, like I told people about Beto or politics, you don't have to believe rhetoric. Rhetoric, any politician is going to tell you something good. So as soon as you learn not to fall for the okie doke of a rhetorical argument, you being an attorney, yeah, you're going to fall for some good opening line. Are you stupid? you need to, yeah, this is crazy.
Well, I think one of the sad things that I'm beginning to realize while observing all of these things that are going on is that while America was founded on the idea of universal education, we have a largely ignorant populace that doesn't think for itself. And that, to me, that's a failure of education. And the failure of the educational system is it fails to equip people to think for themselves. And it's purpose. I think it's purposeful. It's calculated, and it plays perfectly into creating a whole bunch of victims. You don't have what you should have, and we, the government, will give it to you, like the government has gotten our guide. They're like they're in charge. The government's responsibility is not to ensure that you're happy. But it's not to ensure happiness. It's to ensure that you have the freedom to pursue happiness. That doesn't mean that you're going to realize it.
I think sometimes they'll take a bit of truth, which is perhaps as a collective, you do not have what you should have, which sometimes is true, whether it be by personal decision, by being disenfranchised as an ex-felon who's gotten out of jail and not, people won't hire. but they take a little bit of truth and add it in with a lot of lies. And then people are like, yeah, well, okay, yeah, well, maybe you should have more. But guess what? Maybe for for hundreds of years, we benefited this country without any recompense, right? They didn't give us our 40 acres and a mule. They took our property. They burned our cities down in Tulsa and Baltimore, and they took our land in West Austin, Terrytown, and 6th Street and all that. But guess what?
And now they take East off.
No, but guess what? Even though you recognize that, if you may not have everything that we could have or should have had, you want to bankrupt the country, then go ahead and try to ask for 40 acres and a move for everybody. Okay, yeah, let's see how that's going to work. If you want to talk about losing things now, or education as an example, did you vote? Did you run for something? Did you serve on any committee? Well, I don't got no time. Well, you need to find time because that's your damn children. So you're going to worry about being involved in their lives. You're going to sit up there and give me some Willy Wonka stuff that you ain't had no time, or you couldn't write nobody. You don't care. It used to be a time we didn't make excuses. And I'm not perfect, right? I'm not perfect. I'm not saying I've done everything. I've had people, even that you've had, well, I ain't seen you nowhere. But the point is that, and I'm losing my train of thought, is just that, you know what, we have to take responsibility for ourselves to the extent where it applies. We have to recognize the historical things that have happened to us that affect us. Jim Crow, segregation, liberal policies that don't really benefit us, Daniel Patrick Moynihan and his report, which basically supported taking men out of homes so you get assistance, whatever. But you don't just because you acknowledge a historical truth doesn't mean you have to be a victim, and it doesn't mean that you have to sit there and buy somebody telling you
a whole bunch of bull.
Yeah. They used to have this commercial in Austin years ago as a car dealership. And they said, "No more bull, no more bull." Yeah, you buying a bunch of bull that people will say they want to help you, and in 8 years of Obama, you ain't getting nothing to help you. And I'm not saying Trump has really passed nothing, because he has done some things. Like I was reading about how in the tax bill there was another program to put money into revitalizing cities, which they've been trying that for 30, 40 years, right? But just be realistic in how you do things. Be realistic in what you're responsible for, and be realistic and honest that the answer really comes from you, the person, and me, the parent. If I do not get involved in my school, then what do you think? That my daughter went to one of the best schools, Lee Elementary. They changed the name. I don't really know what the school's called. She went there for 6 years. UT professors, UT administrators, UT executives all sent their kids to that school. And one of the problems I had with that school the whole 6 years or 5.5 years that she was there is that they never really learned to think for themselves, or they didn't learn to think, work collaboratively, and that there was a preponderance per the teachers and some of the parents to everything was liberal. Not that everything's conservative is of God, but the point is that you be realistic in how you may assess an issue, how you assess a problem, that you learn to think critically. Who gives a flip about a test? I want to know, can you think? I want to know, can you act together? Just because you got good on the test and you're a blue bonnet school doesn't tell me nothing but take responsibility for that in your life and your kid's life. Sorry.
I just think the situation in terms of education and preparing the black community is dire, because I think too often that the black community as a collective has bought into all the liberal garbage that exists. Woman's right to choose. In the face of genocidal rates of abortion.
You have
woman's right to choose in the face of your political power being reduced by numbers. Almost zero to negative population growth.
Hey, Margaret Sanger, she really figured that one out, didn't she?
Yeah, and just buy it hook, line, and sinker without looking at what's right in front of you.
You can have a legal right and disregard your moral responsibility. So I like I told you before the show, I had a friend who, her and her boyfriend, she got pregnant. And I asked her, I said, "Are you guys going to keep it?" Well, he said it's not convenient for him. I said, "Well, what about you?" "Well, it's not convenient for me and my son." And I said, "Well, it's not good for us." I said, "Well, what about the baby? Doesn't the baby have a right to live?" "Well, it's not convenient." And the point was, is like, and after she had it, I said, well, you might want to pray and ask God because God will forgive you. I said, but the point is that she has a legal right to do that. But there, she had to me at least, you have a more responsibility to that child or to just to God or whatever, depending upon your frame of reference, that you have a responsibility as much as you have a right.
And when I look at things from a legal perspective, I've read Supreme Court opinions where justices were talking about the rights of trees, the rights of animals.
Well,
What about the rights of the unborn?
Well,
And you'll see. I've seen
well,
videos. We did a show on abortion some months ago. In videos where they talk about an unborn child like it's a frog.
That's because if you dehumanize it, you lessen the stench in your conscience.
And you're more, it eases
Yes.
for you to do it morally.
Yes, because when this person told me this, I was like, well, I hope you decide to keep that child. You could put them up for adoption or whatever. Oh well, the whole. I guess the thing is that you could refer to the baby any way you want. Well, I have to go to a procedure, and I said, why do you need to go to a procedure if you're having an abortion? They need to see how far along I am. I said, well, are you going to think about keeping it? Oh, well, they'll talk about that. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm sure they talked about that a lot. But just the idea that if you dehumanize something, then it lessens the stench. I had a girlfriend once, and she had an abortion with her previous boyfriend, and she was still messed up. And again, I'm not saying, I understand rape and incest and some things about that and how you might want to do it there. But even if you get past the morality of it, it's like, well, no, that's a person. Once it has blood, particularly, that is a person. And what you may be able to do legally to that person, I don't know. But here's an interesting question. I don't think this has ever happened. What if a woman was going to have an abortion and the father found out and took the woman to court to try to stop? I've never heard of a case like that. Wouldn't that be an interesting case? Not getting into morality of it. I'm going to take you to court because you were trying to have an abortion. That is my child. I understand it's your body. I've never thought of, think about it. And then you try to take it to court. What law could you base that under? I don't know. But to get to your point of like, I guess I'm assuming your point of this is not right or just or whatever, there's going to have to be some kind of change in the psyche of the society, and there may have to be some kind of legal issue, not necessarily the overturning of the Roe v. Wade, maybe not. Maybe some father has a right.
You're talking about the rights. You're talking about the rights of the unborn and the rights of the father. I don't see how they can be outbalanced by the reality that nature enables women to have children.
Maybe not, but I'm just saying it's just an interesting question. And the child is the child, or when they like to call fetus, the child has no ability to go before a court. The child has no ability to ask the judge for a stay of abortion. You can't. Its legal standing might be immaterial in a general sense because the child has no way to articulate anything. My friend had that child didn't make it past a few months. Never would have had a chance of life.
I hope to do a show in the not too distant future, pretty soon, on abortion again because when you were talking before the show, my wife and I discovered there's a flick she found YouTube download or something she sent me. That she saw that kind of shook her a little bit. And we thought I think it would be good. I think people need to see that. And because I don't mean to be a one-issue person, but to me, if what's Constitution is just life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. The first thing is life, and if that person has life, they should be entitled to that. That's a right given by God. The right to life is by God. Who are we as humans and as God's creation to dictate that right does not exist. To me, it's just like you're playing God.
But you know, one thing that the conservatives should do in regards to education, but in this case in regards to abortion is you can be right about the issue, and I believe fundamentally they are right. Abortion is very selfish. It may be legal, but it's immoral in any general context. I think per Christian faith, I don't think Buddhism or any religion would somehow be able to authorize abortion. It's not, hey, Allah says that's good, you know. And again, I'm not saying I'm an expert on other faiths per se, but what they should do is like, you know what? I'm gonna give away all my ideas. It's bad, but you know what? We disagree with this. But we understand that if abortion is outlawed, there are going to be a bunch of babies that these people who didn't have responsibility to get a driver's license or to pay to tip the waiter at the restaurant are not going to be responsible enough to take care of this baby. So, this is what the Heritage Foundation should do, or somebody. But these idiots, this is dumb as liberals sometimes. I'm sorry, that probably is really bad to. I guess I won't get a job with them now. But you need to plan from a public policy perspective for all these kids that people aren't going to take care of. And I've had disagreements with conservatives or other whatever you call, I don't know what you call me, conservatives or whoever. Well, that's not my responsibility. Okay, I got it's not your responsibility. But if Roe v. Wade is overturned and these babies are born, they're going somewhere. They may become wards of the state, we know. But the federal government should understand and even locally be planning for these children. So if you really think you're going to pack that court and you're going to restrict or overturn Roe v. Wade, you be an asinine jackass.
You need to provide for the consequences of that.
Exactly. So from a logistical or public policy perspective, provide, and because then people say, well, we know if Roe v. Wade's overturned, who's going to take it? You know, we already got that plan. We already got the, we know, because we assume 30% more in each state. There's 300,000 kids a year. You know what? This is going to, we'd have to lower the defense budget by 10%. We'd have to increase the child. So the whole
plan for it.
Plan for it. You have to, because if you don't, number one, if you're a selfish conservative, you go, okay, I know how to shut these liberals up. And if you're a thoughtful conservative, okay, well, I know how to take care of this. And if you're a faith-based conservative, you say, Jesus says, you take care of my children. You take care of the least of those. It tells you at least 2 or 3 times I can think of, take care of those basically who can't take care of themselves, the children, the indigent, the elderly, the disabled.
The least among you.
Yeah, not the lazy. The lazy ones only get a little bit. If you're lazy, no. If you ain't got no, yeah. But the point is, plan for this. Plan for this. Think about it. And if you are moral, well, it's not my responsibility. Well, guess what? You know what? I know it might not be your personal responsibility. It is your moral duty. And you know what? This is pursuant to your Christian faith. So we might want to go open your Bible and figure this one out.
Instead of just going to church on Sunday, just sitting there. And if these people sit in church don't even know what the sermon was about.
The sermon might have been about nothing. The point is, if you have faith in the context of abortion or education, then you should be doing something with somebody, somewhere, somehow. Even if you might not be able to do a lot, you should be interacting with someone. You cannot expect the world to change if you're not willing to change the world. Well, that's a good one. Somebody tell me.
That's a TV original.
It is.
You didn't even know that was going to happen.
No, that sounds good. I'm forgetting it already.
But I guess the other thing that I most want to talk to you about, the local politics is getting kind of interesting. I know I heard that Ora Houston told me herself that she wasn't running again. And I hope to get her on a show sometime in December to discuss how she has enjoyed her experience or not enjoyed it.
Oh, that should be interesting.
I'm looking for it. I think I contacted her office about that more than a month ago, and I was hopeful of getting her on sometime in December. That's convenient for her. But I think it would be instructive for. I know it would be instructive for me. But I think it would be instructive for many of us in the Austin area as to what her experience has been, how she has enjoyed it, what she has learned, and things like that. And I think it would also be beneficial to whomever might succeed her. And I understand there's,
who's running?
I don't know, a guy named Vincent Vincent at
Is that the one they had to
The
certify
one-
to run?
no, Vincent was
Vincent. Okay,
he
move
did-
on to the next one. I'm
he's
just
no-
curious.
he's the only one that I know of. And I
Awesome.
met him at I was at the Asian Resource, Asian Resource Center is where I met him.
Mm-hmm.
He was speaking there.
Hmm.
I think there was a lady running too, but I don't know her name. But
Oh,
that
really?
would be, yeah.
That'd be
It's company
interesting.
running.
Well, I don't know. I would say, as a disclaimer, as a city employee, I won't talk too much about who's going to be on city council. But I'm not touching that one. But I will say that you always want the best people, and what I'm afraid in any instance is that you get the most connected people, not the best people. You know, I'm not I don't even know who the candidates are for that seat. But I think a lot of times, if you look at who's been produced, even locally, they've been connected people, not necessarily people with any fresh ideas, any new love for anything. They were just people that knew, worked out of Doggett's office or worked out of Abbott's office or somebody's office or blah, 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 blah. They're connected, but they don't necessarily have any ability other than the fact that they're connected.
Other than who they know.
Who they know, or the fact that they ran before. You look at some of the local races, people are running that didn't even necessarily do that good when they was in office somewhere. So now they go away and they come back like, I want to do just so at the state level. You know, it's just like, oh wow, you know. So the point is that you have people that it's about the connections, and the voters, unfortunately, to the extent that you said, or you were saying earlier, don't think is that, you know, you need to look and see who has the ideas that will appropriately may seem to best suit the needs of the community, versus whose ideas am I told are good, and the Democratic Party said this, or so and so said this. No, who fits your values? Who fits what you believe? Did you do any research? Did you go talk to them? Or they came out to all the precincts. Nah, fool, they supposed to come out to everybody in the precinct. Well, you know, Beto came out to every county. Well, dude, they supposed to come out to every county. This is like this, you know, get past the showmanship of the race.
Get past the facade.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, once they're in office, it's like a marriage. They give you the good side. Once they're in the office, you might not get what you think. You're gonna get something completely different. So don't fall for the okie doke, as we were referencing earlier. Make sure that you try to choose people that are really going to help you, or at least that have the intention to have integrity. So, you know, to talk about Richard, integrity. There's a lady I know named Marguerite, complete liberal, but you know what? I know she has integrity, so if she were ever to run, I can trust integrity. Most of them don't have any integrity. I'm James so and so. Oh yeah, okay, whatever. You're just gonna say whatever they tell you to say, and that's why I left the whole thing. I was like, I'm not gonna say what you just tell me to say. You can take that, but you know, let's be real, because if we keep on making social choices, police, public services, social services, response times, infrastructure projects, whatever, school locations, school boundaries, all these things. If you just keep making so decisions,
and get so results.
Nah, that's if you're lucky. Your stuff gonna be trash. So if you can't learn to make a good decision on your vote, don't come in terms of how you're voting. Then you are partly responsible for the problem which exists.
Not part of the solution.
Well, I liked him. But nah, fool, you ain't supposed to vote on I like him. I like Beto. I like Ted. No, which one fits your values? I like so-and-so from there. He ain't done nothing. I like. No. I'm not saying you shouldn't like them. But you know, you have to make this is critical. We talking about police. Well, I didn't do nothing. Well, okay. Get what you get.
And then they passed the buck.
We all pass the buck, but ain't nobody trying to say they're responsible. Everybody complained about everybody else, and then when somebody says how did you vote? Did you ask anything? Well, I couldn't vote for a Republican. I couldn't vote for an independent. I couldn't vote for a libertarian or whatever. Why don't you just find the one that actually seems like they're going to do something, that has an idea? Which one has an idea that may work? And then maybe think about voting for that person. And if you don't find none of them that seem to have decent ideas, maybe you should write somebody in. I don't know, but just don't vote based upon who you like.
Yeah,
Because that's how we got in this mess.
Unfortunately, I think that's what happens largely in the African American community.
In all communities, it affects us more.
It's about who you like and who you
like.
Who you like, or who you think likes you. And I think that given our historical background from Africa through slavery and all of that, and through Jim Crow, through segregation, I think that we African Americans are better than that, and are better. We're smarter than, should be smarter.
Just because you're smart doesn't mean you use your intellect. It just means that you have the ability to use it. It doesn't mean you use nothing. It's like you always say, well, how do you like me now? No, you need to think about something. We have ability, but if you don't think critically, and that's the problem. Is every time I try to tell these people think critically, well, why don't you like him? You don't like black people. I bet I ain't see you at homecoming. I'm like, dude, I'm just telling you to think about this. I'm not telling you got to think the same thing all the time. I'm telling you, think about this. This is critical. We used to be able to have WEB. You know, you'd have Marcus Garvey, Booker T. You know, you had WEB. You know, you had different trains of thought. Now it's just like, yeah, that's what Hillary said. Yeah, that's what Andy Brown said. Okay, well then, when we lose the ability to figure something out for ourselves? When do we got to?
When do we surrender that? When do we abdicate our responsibility to think for ourselves?
It must have been at least a generation or so.
No, we abdicate. I think it was abdicated when the sellout came for. I still say it comes down to white liberal affection and friendship.
But even so, white liberal affection, friendship. Malcolm said, "Don't trust the white liberals." But you know what? I'm like, dude, you got to think. Because if you don't think, you are in trouble. We are in trouble. I think we can make it, and we will make it, but we won't make it unless we work together, unless people stop just trying to act like hey, well, you know what? I got to think this way because I don't like conservative. I don't like people. Fool! You don't even know. What are you worried about who you like? You stupid? You need to ask Jesus to enlighten you because you ain't using none. God gave you some power of discernment. Clearly, you cannot use a human level of discernment, let alone biblical.
Kennard, well, it's been great chatting with you, brother.
Okay.
It's good to see you again. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well,
And I'm sure I'll be asking you back again because I like to hear what you got to say to me because I learned from it.
I had to make some money off of it.
Thanks, brother.
Hey, I'm not even lying to you.